Hi everyone, we're going to go ahead and do the demo for Lab 2, which focuses on vector data. You'll see that I've just already gone ahead and downloaded the file and have it all set up to have the sample data in place. So put it in this Lab 2 vector folder within my Google Drive GIS folder. If I go in there, you can sort of see what the files look like. So I've said this in the lecture as well, but you'll notice that every file has the same name, but a different extension. And these all together here are part of one shapefile. So I want you to just remember this so when we load them in ArcGIS, you can see that it doesn't see all of those. It only looks for the one that's not SHP. However, to load it up, you need maybe not all of these, but most of them, and it's better to just copy them all together. So I'm going to switch back over to ArcGIS. Remember what we have done before. I'm going to go to create a new project for this week. Going to do map. It's going to ask me to give it a name. I'm going to call it lab 02. And rather than send it to the here, I want to make sure I'm saving this permanently. So I'm going to go ahead and bring it over to my Google Drive, which is this PC. This is where mine is. Yours might differ. Your Google Drive might not be as big a mess as mine is, as usual. And I'm just going to point it at the lab2 vector folder that I created before. And I'm going to ask it to not create a folder. So it'll just put everything in that base one that I've already created. Hit OK. It'll take it a second. Once we're ready to go, should load everything in. Now, the next part we're going to want to do is to add in some of those vector data that we just downloaded and that we have all ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and when my map gets pulled up here, I'm going to come in. You want to be on the map tab up at the top here and go to add data. Alternatively, if you have a catalog window up or a catalog tab up, you can use it there. But I'm just going to start with add data. And I'm going to go in. So the project folder is the one that I'm in. So if I go to folders, lab 2 vector, that's all the stuff I downloaded there. What you'll probably notice right away is that every type of data that's in here has a little icon next to it. These sort of show the flavor of shapefile, whether it's points, lines, or areas. You can see that this one's a point, that one's an area, that one's a line. I'm going to choose states, Mexico, and Canada. What I've done there, if you don't know how to do this, I held down the control key while I clicked on things. It let me click multiple things. You could do one after another if you wanted to as well. Say OK. What this has done is it's just brought in these vector data that are the provinces and territories of Canada, the states of Mexico, and the states of the US. So we have quite a lot of these data in already, just like we did with raster data last week. We can turn them off and on over here. And you can sort of see how they correspond, hopefully well, to the base map that's in there behind us. We could turn that world topographic map off if we wanted to as well, but we don't really need to. It's probably worth keeping it on. So these are polygon data, and you can sort of see that right away by the fact that they look like areas and they cover up the map behind them. Could also go ahead and add in some of the other data we had in there. The ones in particular that are useful here are probably US cities, which is points, and US highways, which is lines. Choose those, hit OK. It's going to usually default to putting points on top of lines, on top of polygons, because that's the way you usually want things. But just keep in mind that it might not always work out that way. And if you can't see something, it's often just behind it. This order means something over here in the table of contents. That's why it says drawing order at the top. So if I were to say move cities below states, you can see some of them peeking out from the sides there, but most of them get lost behind those polygons. So we could zoom in and out. We could do all the same things we were doing last week. Probably worth playing around a little bit with that. There's one other thing I want y'all to see is that the data frame over here, the map document itself, the tab, has its own properties as well. So just like we would for a layer when we did it with raster data last week, we can right click here and go down to properties, or we can just double click, and it's going to bring up this properties for us. It'll let us set things like what the display unit is, if it's decimal degrees or degrees, minutes, seconds. If we wanted to limit the extent on it, we could do it that way. If we wanted to clip layers, we could. This will become really important next week when we're dealing with coordinate system, but this is where we would set it to be something other than the sort of default WGS 84 coordinate system. Got all sorts of things we can do in there. And you can put grids and things like that on. We'll get to this later in the class also if we wanted to. All sorts of different ways we can kind of illustrate our map and make it a little bit easier to work with. We just hit cancel. But all of our individual layers have attributes and properties and things with them as well. We talked in class and in the lecture about the attribute table that goes with every shapefile. If you want to see what one of these looks like, to get to them, you right click on the layer in the table of contents and you go to where it says attribute table right there. That'll bring up a new tab that is the table for that layer. In this case, in Pro, it's usually going to drop it in underneath here. You can pull this out if you just grab it. And you can either have it sort of floating or you can dock it wherever you want. I actually kind of like them down underneath like that. And you can very easily open up multiple ones at the same time. If I wanted to come over here and do US cities as well, just right click, attribute table. And what you'll see is I've got it now as a tab within my sort of tables thing down here. In this case, it's showing me some demographics about those cities. I think this is the 2000 census for different municipalities. If you want to look at any of these things and begin to just do some quick things with them, if you sort of hover over them, it's going to tell you what type of data it is. So that these are what are called long integers. It's an integer with a longer number of characters that can be in it. If you hover over this one, it's going to say it's text, maxed out at 25 characters, all sorts of information in there. Anything that's numeric, you could right click on it at the top there, and you can choose explore statistics or visualize statistics or summarize, or yeah, visualize statistics or explore statistics. And what that's going to do is it's just going to bring up a little thing where it shows you a distribution of it. In this case, it's showing you that there's some that are really, really big. These are like your New Yorks and your LAs, but most of them are really pretty small. You can choose the different numeric ones over here. You could split them off if you wanted to by something else. So if you wanted to do the state that they're in also, it's going to end up with way too many classes, but you can sort of see what that would do if it runs in a second. So you got all sorts of fun things you can do with these statistics just on numeric fields, and just to show you a little bit. If you ever see this loading thing and it seems to be just taking forever, you can always just click that and it'll stop whatever it's doing. When you're done with statistics, you can just close that. You can always bring it back up later if you wanted to. Other things you can do if you want to see just stuff for an individual feature without having to like find it in the table. If you're on the Explore tab right here and you click on something, it's going to pop up what's called a pop-up, and it's going to tell you whatever you clicked on. So I clicked on the only thing I clicked on there that it hit was the state of Oregon. If I hit something like that, it's showing me that that's US Highway 84, multi-lane divided, all the information that would be in the attribute table for that thing. And if I get something that a lot of them are close together, it's going to give me all of them as sort of a list here. Most things in ArcGIS that you can click on, you can also click and drag. This is not one that works real well on, but you sometimes can get multiple things by holding Shift or other things like that. All right. So we talked about clicking on things. We've talked about opening attribute tables. Other things we can do that might be useful. I'm going to go ahead and turn off some of my other layers here. So this charts thing just means that I built a chart off of that. I can always right click and delete it if I wanted to. That was that distribution thing I had before. I'm going to go ahead and remove these for everything but states. And then I'm going to right click here on states. And if you look right here, I've got the word label. If I just choose label, it's gonna label them for me. So now I have all of my things labeled. And as I zoom in and out, you'll see that the labels kind of change where they're oriented eventually. And if I move around a little, they might get moved in to different spots and things like that. So what's happening is it's trying to auto fit the labels as best it can off of whatever principles I have. In this case, if I'm zoomed out at the state or the country level, the name is actually pretty hard to use over in here. So there's a lot of different properties I can set with labeling. If I right click on it, instead of just choosing labels, if I choose label properties, it's going to pop something up over here. Right now it's saying that it's using the state name. So $ feature means for each feature point, it means take the next field, that's state name. I can just delete that and use state abbreviation. So I said at one point that building these things is not really all that difficult because you just click on things. That's all I'm doing here. So I hit apply. Now it's labeling them off of the abbreviation. Sometimes that's a little bit easier to use for these sorts of things. There's all sorts of other settings and things like that we can do with labels. We'll get to them a little bit more when we do cartography things later on in the semester. Other cool things we can do, we have this measure tool right here. You can take this, and if I wanted to say measure roughly how wide Iowa is, I can click once and go all the way across. It's going to give me miles, but I can change that to be other things. That word up there where it says geodesic right here, what that's saying is if I go out far enough, it's going to incorporate the curvature of the Earth. So it's giving me a more accurate measurement than if I was just going one way or another. And you can kind of do complicated things and areas and stuff too. So the measure tool, again, just on the map tab, it's up here. I also have the ability to locate stuff if I wanted to. This is going to start off using, you can do layers, but I can also just use like a quick geocoder. So if I just really had no idea where Notre Dame, Indiana was, I can search that. And for like a one-off thing, it'll find the spot for me. You'll see that it's just underneath states, but it did actually find it in the right spot. And once I close that, that A will go away. It's not stored permanently. So there's some distances. There's some of these other things. Another thing that we do quite a lot when we talk about vector data is change the symbology. And symbology in this case is sort of what it means to display, like how you're displaying something. So right now I'm just going to close these down so I get the full screen. Um, right now, what we're seeing is the full, every state is colored the same way. They're all sort of colored this light purple. If I click on that color swath, just like I could do the band combinations before, I have the ability to change that so that they all are just, a black outline if I want to and transparent. Or I can come over to this word properties here. And under properties, I have the ability to set more specific things on there. If I come back out a little bit, I also have this primary symbology. Right now it's telling me it's a single symbol. If I want to change that to be unique values, it's going to ask me what is the unique value field. I'm going to choose to use state name. And right now it's saying all other values are showing up as gray, but I can go in here and under more, if I wanted to do it right here, I can hit add all values. And now every single state color is going to be a different color. Looks like one of those classic wall maps that you might see. I can also change the color ramp so I have some, bolder colors or things like that. And any one of these individual color swaths I can click on and it'll change it also for me. So that's unique values. I also have the ability to do different categories. So I'm going to switch from my states here over to my highways. And you'll notice if my symbology tab is still up, then it'll come over here and do this. I can go ahead and do unique values on this one. But in this case, I have this admin class. And my admin class is interstate, state highway, and US highway. I can change the colors around if I want. I can start making them bigger or smaller or anything else that I want to do. So if I wanted to click on one of these individual things and make it bigger because it's a bigger type of road, I can do that. So now I have ones that are bigger and ones that are smaller. So you can see over here that interstates are one color, state highways, US highways, those are all different colors in here. Now, one more to see is doing this based off of different types of numeric values. If you remember, the US cities had a bunch of demographics in there. So if I change this to be graduated colors or proportional symbols or graduated symbols or something like that, I can do that. So in this case, I'm going to choose graduated colors. I'm going to choose my field to be, let's do the population in 1990. Right now it's doing 5 classes off of this Jenks natural breaks algorithm. but I could change it to be more or less or anything else that I wanted it to be. If I wanted it to be 10 classes. See things that are lower are going to be one color, things that are higher are going to be a different color. And if you zoom in on some place that has, some small cities and some big cities, you can see that Manhattan comes up as really, really, or New York itself and all five boroughs comes up as really, really high. Some of the other cities in here that are a little bit different come in a little bit differently. We could do the same thing if we wanted to with graduated symbols, or proportional symbols is what it calls it here. So you have things that are smaller, and things that are big become much bigger. The template is this little guy right here. And it was gradually build it out so you can see that your New Yorks, your Philadelphias are really big. Some of these other little places are a little bit smaller. So I'd say go ahead and experiment around with these a little bit as you're building things for both the graduated symbols and proportional symbols, and kind of how you make these things as you go. We also can, if we want to, exclude things based off of values. So if we wanted to just not display anything, not delete it from the file, but like make it so we could never see it in our map itself, if we go into properties for a layer, we could go down to definition query. And if we wanted to say only see those places with a population that was greater than 100,000, just change that to be greater than, hit apply, and then apply. And it should have dropped out quite a lot of the ones that were in there that were smaller scale places. Yep, there it goes. So now you can see it's dropping out all the smaller ones. All right. So other things we can do that are kind of cool are create little charts and things like that. So we have proportional symbols. I've just removed some of these. If I go to charts here, I can do, say, a bar chart or a pie chart. I'm going to do a pie chart because they're circular. Eventually, if I do a pie chart and did it off of the proportion of male and female from the census that's in there, eventually it'll load up and I'll see a little pie chart for them. So if I did, whoops, if I could actually hit it right. So when it actually loads, it's just going slowly, I think, because I've got it up on Google Drive at the moment too. But that should eventually finish off. And what you'll end up seeing is that for each one, it's got a nice little pie chart for that symbol. So it's actually breaking out the data that way. It can be a really easy way to show these things quickly and effectively. Okay, one of the other things I want to do here is start looking at selections. So just to make this a little bit easier, I'm going to go ahead and remove the weird symbology that I have here, and just go back to regular sort of basic symbology on the US cities here. Once that loads up, I want to go ahead and also I'm going to go remove that definition query also. Just so I went back in, double clicked on it, same as right clicking. Going to go ahead and close here just to delete that query. Hit OK. It'll bring back all the cities here. So now if I want to do a select by attributes, I have two different ways to do it. One is I can go to my map tab and up at the top here it says select by attributes. I can also do it from the part over here in selection, select by attributes. Or what I can do as well is open the attribute table. And right up at the top here it has select by attributes. It's all the same thing. The only advantage of doing it within the table is it defaults to choosing the right layer. If you do it up there, you have to choose the layer. What it's going to let me do is create one of these queries for things that I might want to do that I might want to select in here. So I could do that same thing I did before, where I look for the population is greater than 100,000. Hit apply. And you'll notice that everything that meets that gets selected in the attribute table, and also gets selected in the viewer here. It remembers that cyan color. You can see that there's 200 of the 3,149. And these buttons right here mean that I can either show all of the things or just the things I have selected. So I can do that. But there's other ways I can do selections also. I could say select the state is equal to, and then in my drop, oops, sorry, that's the code for it. State name is equal to, and in my drop down, I can say find all of the ones that are in Connecticut. Sure enough, we're right on the edge of Connecticut, but we should get a couple. Yeah, you can see them up here. You can see all the ones that are within Connecticut are going to get highlighted up there. Or I can actually do other fields in there as well. I just accidentally deleted it. But another thing that is useful to be able to do is like say, show me all those places where there are more male than female populations. So I'm going to do males is greater than, and then if I look at my drop down here, if I go all the way down to the bottom, I have values, but I also have fields. If I switch that over to fields, now I'm looking at all the other fields that are in there, and I can say it's greater than female. There's not a huge number of them. If you run it, so basic demographics, usually there is slightly higher number of female individuals in the population than male. And then we have we have 386 of them. You can see them in both ways. Some of them show up here. It's often places with military bases or like Alaska that end up in this situation. Okay. If you ever want to clear out selections for selecting by attributes, you can close the thing. There's a clear button right here. If something is selected, it'll show up here also. If you get worried that your data just all disappeared, usually it means that you had the show selected records on. If you turn it back over, you see all of them. So, all right. So selecting by attributes, the other way we looked at this before was selecting by locations. So if I wanted to go through, and I'm just going to find a particular state, we'll click on West Virginia. I didn't select it, I just chose it, but I can take the select tool here, go over and click on West Virginia. I've now selected it. And if I loaded up the states, it'd be selected in the attribute table as well. And if I wanted to go to select by location, this one you do usually need to do from the map tab up here. You can look at this as kind of building a sentence. So I'm going to select cities that intersect my US states. And I'm going to use my selected records. And if I wanted to, I could put a buffer on this as well. So if I hit apply, it's going to choose all of the cities that intersect. In this case, that's fall within or on the edge of. I could also do this for multiple things. So if I have my highways up, I could put highways. Oops, I just did cities twice. US highways, US cities. So now it's selecting everything that's within both of them. So you can see how you could kind of chain these together. I could very easily not chain them together. So if I removed selected by records, it would do everything that falls within every state. In that case, it's all of them. But if instead I wanted to do select all of my cities that, so I have a drop down here, are within a distance of my highways, and I want that distance to be 1,000 meters or 1 kilometer. I could have done it that way too. You see, like I said before, it'll let you do decimal degrees, but it's actually not a linear measurement, so it doesn't really work. So it's going to go through and it's going to find every US city that's within a distance of a highway, and that distance is 1 kilometer or 1,000 meters. So you can see that they're starting to pop up there. It looks like there's 303 of them. It's a little arbitrary since the point for the city isn't the entirety of the city. It's just a random point in the middle of it, or a centroid point in the middle of it. But it's probably a good indicator of how to get started with this sort of analysis. So if you want to, you could then chain these things together into like a further thing where you could select, say, all of the cities above 10,000 people or 100,000 people, and then from there select all of the roads that are nearby those big cities. And that's part of the assignment is to go through and do that. So that's really about it for selecting by features, for selecting by locations, for selecting by attributes. What I really want y'all to take away from this is how to look at the vector data, how to understand the relationships between them, how to do these selections based off of the topologies that we talked about, and then also a little bit about how to symbolize them to show some sort of pattern. And the assignment will sort of reflect that for this week. All right. As always, reach out to me if you have any questions, and good luck.